Ready to go? All right. Welcome, everybody. I'm going to call the regular Moab City Council meeting on October 24th, 2023 to order at 6:02 p.m. And I'd like for Brad Woodford to lead us in the pledge. To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Brad. All right, first item of business today is agenda item 2, public comments, which is limited to 3 minutes per person. If you have any items that you would like to speak to that's on the agenda or otherwise, this is your time to do that. And if you could fill out one of the forms, perfect, Mary. Yeah, just give it to Carly.
Thanks. I'm Mary O'Brien. I'm wanting to speak to agenda 5.1. In October 2021, 2 years ago, the Moab City Council unanimously sent a letter to the Mount Tyler-LaSalle National Forest. It began, the Moab City Council would like to express their support for the conservation alternative to be considered fully and equally in the draft EIS for the forest plan update scheduled for 2022. The council believes there are many aspects of the conservation alternative that warrant full consideration as a means to the conditions that are in the best interests of the city of Moab and our larger community. Specifically, we would like to draw attention to the watershed protections, climate adaptation plan, opportunities for enjoyment of recreation in a quiet environment, habitat and wildlife protections, and the encouragement of independent science on the Mount Tyler-LaSalle. Our watershed is essential to our continued enjoyment of life in Moab, and the community in the city and Spanish Valley depend on the aquifer recharge and filtration provided by the water that falls on the LaSalles. This did not happen. Mount Tyler-LaSalle National Forest draft EIS issued 2 months ago in 2023 stated that the conservation alternative was eliminated from analysis in the DEIS, draft EIS, because it did not meet the purpose and need, included elements that were appropriate only at the project level, would be expensive to implement, etc. However, the DEIS gave no examples of how the alternative didn't meet the purpose and need or was not appropriate at the forest-wide level, etc. Instead, the forest spelled out their complete plan in 2 volumes of the management plan for how they would manage the forest in the next 15 or so years. That's their alternative B, A being the current plan, which is 37 years old. Alternatives C and D are mere seemingly random fragments. These fragments have to be picked up here and there in the environmental consequences sections of volume 2 of the DEIS and some in volume 1 of the DEIS. There is no complete alternative C or D to compare to select from elements for the final EIS. This is contrary to law, specifically National Environmental Policy Act, the law that requires a range of alternatives in an EIS, environmental impact statement, for examination by decision makers such as you and the public during the comment period. I've sent you examples of courts affirming the need for a range of alternatives, including alternatives developed outside of the federal agency in the community. For this reason and additional reasons that don't fit in 3 minutes, I urge you to table the approval of the draft letter that has been drafted by the staff as the Moab City Council comments on the draft EIS. The comments are due November 16th. You have another meeting November 14th. And I'm happy to answer any questions in the next 2 weeks. I've worked on NEPA alternatives for the last 41 years, and largely on the Forest Service, sometimes on the BLM. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. Any other comments from the citizens? Yes, Pete. It's been a while.
What's up?
It's been a while.
It has been a while. Yeah, in fact, I was going to start out just mentioning that 8 months ago, I came here to speak before you. And you'll probably never guess this, but it's about the same issue. Actually, after I spoke, I want to thank Lex Bell came up and approached me, and do you know how we can find some of these people? Anyway, one night I was at Rotary Park. I wasn't intending to say this, but I'm going to add. And there are a bunch of the noisy vehicles, sports cars gathering there. And of course, some of you know, I only got a cell phone less than a year ago, and I don't carry it with me. A bunch of them are gathering there. And I thought, man, I know this is going to be a perfect opportunity. I ran down the street to a friend's house. And, can I use your phone real quick? I called dispatch. So the next morning I checked my email, and there was an email from about 11:30 p.m. from our now police chief that said, we got a call from dispatch about some noisy vehicles. Was that you? I said, yeah, it was. And he said, well, I want you to know we pulled over 3 of them and told them you need to fix those mufflers right away, or we're going to ticket you until you comply. And then the police chief, then police chief Jared Garcia, a couple of months later, I heard him speak, and he said, yeah, we pulled over a bunch of them and they refused to change their mufflers. Anyway, there was some exciting news that I learned recently. New York City, among other cities in the US, recently installed acoustic cameras. They will pick up noise from loud vehicles. They'll record video of it, get the license plate, and issue citations. So they've issued 71 citations so far. As far as I know, none of them has been challenged in court, so it might be a little premature, but I'm kind of hoping that, because, it's learning to do, on the road sound measurements can be challenging, but the acoustic cameras, they're trained, they can do it. They can pinpoint the camera. And I was kind of surprised to learn, I haven't even got what I was going to say, so I'll cut it, that how can they pinpoint where the direction is coming from? Well, we can tell like that sound is coming from where. There's a time lag when the sound reaches one ear to the other. The acoustic cameras are much quicker than that, so they can pick it up. But anyway, so I found something from a website about California. I thought it was kind of entertaining. On average, cars moving about 30 miles per hour produce sound levels ranging from 33 to 69 decibels. And it says that's the range between a quiet library and a loud dishwasher. And it occurs to me, I've never been able to hear a dishwasher from a mile away, but I definitely hear these loud vehicles. And I just hope we can do something to get it in line, because I know half a dozen people have already moved from Moab, noise being the #1 issue. It's on my radar to possibly relocate, and noise would be the reason for me to leave. Anyway, I think it's time to address that more aggressively. Thank you.
Thanks, Pete. It was a little noisy this weekend. I noticed that myself. All right. Any other public comments? All right, we'll close the public comment section of our agenda, and we'll move on to department head updates. We have 2 updates. First update is from David. It's the finance update on first quarter of 23-24. And I believe you guys received the information in your email today.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, so what you received were 2 documents. One was, again, a sort of a top level summary of the status of where budgets are and actuals for the quarter. And the other one is a more detailed printout from Polaris, our financial and accounting software that gives you a true financial picture with a lot of detail for each of the departments, but also for each of the funds. So I don't necessarily, unless you'd like me to, I can answer any questions about it, but I would say the upshot is generally things are on track as expected. Budget amounts, you see some that are maybe a little over 25%, which is where we're at for the year in terms of the length of time. Some are under. That's just a really standard way things work in terms of budgeting and in terms of the spending. So nothing in there really was a red flag for me at all looking at it. In terms of revenues, I will say that things are right now looking pretty solid. We got recently revenue numbers for October, which would have been for August actual revenues. We just got those in, and the upshot there is overall we're at about 6% higher than we were at this point last year in terms of sales and use tax revenues coming in now. Who knows what that'll mean? That doesn't include September. September was, I mean, who knows? Transit room tax was really about even. Resort tax was up. Base sales tax was down just a little bit for those 4 months of reporting. So again, just sort of, I'd say relatively speaking, very steady as she goes right now from a financial standpoint from the city in terms of both spending and in terms of revenues.
Thanks. Questions for David? All right. Thanks, David.
Thank you.
All right, next up is Chief Bell to discuss with us and present to us the update from the police department and some statistics that we now are able to gather with the new Spillman data collection. So we're looking forward to hearing what you have to share with us today.
Thank you. I'll be excited if it works. I might leave it in this format because it was giving me trouble, but so what I have as far as an update is I'll show you some of the September stats that we were able to pull from Spillman and the accuracy of those. And my good friend Peter, I looked through some of our traffic citations and I can look backwards and we can kind of track what we're giving citations for. So I can even show you some of those things. But first I wanted to give you an idea of what last year looked like. So this is Fat Pot. I did my best to pull some things out of it. The incident link doesn't work because it's Fat Pot. But to show you what it looks like. So there were 126 crimes reported. The sorry, that's not loving me here. That's what I was worried about. There it goes. But the way that they record those, and it's not sharing this one. Any way to make that work, Summer? Looks like it does. Yeah, a different screen. Does this? Okay, there's something. So really quickly, it does show you the type of a call on the left with case numbers. But it shows the statistics are off when you look because it'll show a bunch of incidents under the same case number. I highlighted a bunch in yellow right there. So that throws off the amount of calls that it looks like we received or the amount of incidents that we investigated because of the way that Spillman does their statistics. So we're gonna be jumping back and forth a lot, I guess. Let's go. So on citations, we issued 56 citations during the month of September of 2022. I wish sharing was so much easier. No, it's all good. Okay, so this is what we can pull out of Spillman, and this will give you an idea. So we had roughly 126 incidents last year, and the proactive part of it, we had 56 citations in the month. So I highlighted some that were higher stats, but one of the coolest things is how it breaks things down, and you can see, you know, I highlighted some with different colors. The bomb threat or attack, we had one. I mean, how often do you have those, right? But animal problems are really high. Traffic accident with damage. Code enforcement, we can look at individually, like the red highlighted would be domestic violence related calls. Found property, that's one that's it's a big utilizer of time for our people because they have book into the property and then people come to claim it and we have to go find it and pull it back out. But we have had a ton of it in the last couple of months, and tourists leaving things different places. Anyway, that's another story. I highlighted some in green that have to do with some of our transient unhoused population and intoxicated individuals have been pretty high of late. But the biggest stat I wanted to show you, so traffic stops, 450 traffic stops in September alone. And then we get to the incidents investigated, there were 1,078 compared to 126. Now, part of that is the 450 traffic stops is a result of having a lot more officers on the street. And a lot of these incidents are proactive incidents that they have investigated or they've created by making traffic stops, arresting people, et cetera. So that is an amazing stat, I think, increase. But I wanted to show the way that citations, because especially Peter, his interest in these, we can pull up the type of citations. Oh, why are we not doing this share thing? I'm sorry, guys. We're trying to fix formatting too. So now the report from here forward will have our title on the top, but you can see speeding has been our focus through September as they build the new traffic lights at the north end of town. We've been doing a lot of regulation there and around school zones. So we wrote 104 citations just in the month of September for speeding alone. There are a whole bunch of other violations under this, but the fact remains that they're out there working hard. 104 citations in a month is a lot for as many officers as we have working out there. So to share back to this is we have 1,078 total incidents, 131 citations for 150 violations. October preview, just to show a little bit of where we're headed. This is going to work for me. I wish I was faster. I apologize. All right, here we go. Our total incidents already in October, we're at 814. So the math works. We're staying pretty consistent on that. We had an airplane crash during this month, which of course is not an everyday thing. I looked at citations too, because traffic stops, and we're at 324 so far in October. So we're staying pretty consistent, but the amount of information we can pull out of this is also amazing compared to what it used to be with FATPOT. And we can break down individual types of citations like Peter was talking about. Anyway, I'm pretty pleased with the direction that we're going right now. Our officers are very proactive. I know that we've noticed a lot of traffic enforcement. I get asked about traffic enforcement in the downtown area, and frankly, we're doing it there, but we're choosing to stop them outside of downtown because of the safety factor where, you know, if we try to pull somebody over right next to a business or it's double parked, we're going to create a hazard rather than mitigate a hazard. So we're making those traffic stops. We're just following them to where it's a safer place. And I've always told the officers, you choose where they pull over. You make that decision as long as you've seen that violation. But things are going well. Right now we're at fully staffed. We've got one start in the academy January 2nd. That's all I've got.
Great. Questions for the chief?
I figure traffic stops can mean a lot of things. So what falls under that versus, being a separate category? Like, I don't know, like if a moving violation and not, running a stop sign, is that fall under a traffic stop? Or is this traffic stop maybe more like registration or?
No, those all fall under the
Okay,
same. And
Okay,
traffic stops are proactive traffic stops. So say
Okay.
you respond to a suspicious vehicle, you find it and pull it over, it's going to be a suspicious vehicle.
okay,
So these are all proactive traffic stops for you name it. I mean, I can break down the list or show you, I have it here and I can absolutely send it, but it'll break down the offense for every traffic stop.
okay.
So equipment violation, no license, etc.
Okay. And I kind of saw as it was moving fast, but what are maybe after the traffic stops, the top 2 or 3 other things after that in terms of numbers of calls?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that makes it stand out.
I-
Yeah.
Yes, I actually was looking at that. Okay, thank you.
And I'm kind of guessing like with EMS,
A lot of
Sometimes
medicals.
it helps to know numbers of calls, but really some calls are going to take a lot more time than others, I guess, and probably more personnel or,
Yeah, they are.
you know.
So I'll pop this up again really fast for you because it's not terribly hard to see, but traffic accidents are high. They're highlighted. Animal problems, 30. Traffic accidents with injuries, thankfully only 4, but that's too many. Code enforcement violations. Found property again. I was saying that's kind of been a struggle for us lately. Medical emergencies, 28. Parking problems, 23. Foot patrol, we've been out proactively walking the river and pathways. So 31 of those. School resource officer high, but it's a busy job. And that's not even all the cases that he took. So those are some of the higher things, reckless drivers, but thankfully we've got 450 traffic stops. So we probably caught several of them. Suspicious persons are really high. Vagrancy, bin inspections. Those aren't glamorous, but they're time consuming. That's something why we're sending our code enforcement officers through SFO block is they can handle those once they become SFO certified, which saves the LEO's time.
I'll let someone else ask questions, but I guess I did have one more just because Pete was talking and you guys were referring to each other. Do we have statistics on noise, and do we know like how many noise warnings we have versus maybe citations or?
I think
don't
we
know if
can
that's-
we can
Yeah.
find it. I probably don't have it highlighted
Okay,
on what I have, but
yeah,
I definitely think we could research that. We have noise disturbances on here, but that could encompass the
yeah, it
party.
could be a
it could
party
be-
or, okay, thanks. No, it's just sometimes the legislature asks us and yeah, okay, thanks.
You're talking about foot patrol. Are those citations given out on foot patrol or just?
No, that's an
All right.
officer contacting dispatch and saying, I'll be out on a foot patrol, and
Oh.
they're usually starting west to east, east to west, but they're walking that whole path. So at 31 different occasions during the month, they were out walking that whole path. And that's usually I ask them to be doubled up when they do that, 2 of them, just for their safety.
I was just kind of curious too, like the airplane crash one. Which I'm assuming is the one that was at the airport. Did you guys get called out on that? Is that why it's in the statistic or?
Yeah, it's there because we wrote a report relation to it. So one of our officers was sent out initially to help locate the aircraft. And then they requested help when they weren't certain how many victims they had. They found that then we had 3 children, only 2 had been found. So several of us started running that way to help. And thankfully we got canceled. They figured out that he wasn't in there, but that means we just wrote a report on it. So obviously.
Okay. So I was wondering if it was
Yeah.
just like county stuff.
Yeah.
Some county.
And there's in here, there are agency assists that are often us helping them. I think that saw them, but there they are, agency assistants 9. That would be us helping them on a call and then writing a report so that they can have that in their report for a case. Any other questions?
Any other questions for the chief?
I guess I just have one, but it might be a longer term one or for, after the election, new council members. I take it kind of, you guys watch this stuff and reflect over it. And then at some point will let us know if there are, simple things we can be doing on our end to maybe reduce the number of certain kinds of calls. I mean,
Mhm.
only so much in our control, but humans, but
No, but actually looking at it today, I noticed from last year to this year, there were several types that have gone way down. I think through our enforcement, DUIs are way down this year and we're working more shifts. So I take that as a good thing.
do those tend to be seasonal or usually one seasonal year round? Yeah,
No, yeah, it's all the time.
Yeah.
But we've had a lot of DUI enforcement shifts since I got here, and with all the young officers wanting to work overtime, it's state funded overtime, and they're out digging for them, and we're not seeing a lot of DUI arrests. So that to me says people realize don't drive drunk in Moab.
thanks.
Great. Any other questions, comments for the chief? Yes, Caitlin.
Can you break down the animal offenses a little anymore?
I'm
Oh.
certain that we can, yes. This is broad category
Mhm.
and we could absolutely, I think, break that down a little bit more. I know on the citation side, you can see animal bite, they were issued a citation,
Yeah.
animal at large. Dead animal, we get called on
Right.
those, so we can't break those down.
Okay, seemed like there was a I think it was 30 that were under other animal offenses, and I was just
Yeah,
curious.
I would have to dig into that to see everything that that includes. I would imagine it's from a barking dog to, several things could be.
Any other questions? Thanks, chief.
Okay.
We'll probably ask you to give us a report on a quarterly basis, something
That's
along those
fantastic.
lines. We can talk about that when we meet this week.
Okay.
Great, thank you. We've been waiting for this information for a long time. It's great that we have technology now that can give it to us. All right, next up, consent agenda. We have 3 items, 4.1, 0.2, and 0.3. The first one is the Red Ribbon Week proclamation. Chief and I were at HMK on Monday to talk to the kids about healthy lifestyles and drug-free lifestyles that we would like everybody to participate in, and how to be healthy and how to exercise. So this week is Red Ribbon Week, and so there's a proclamation that I read to the kids, and so that's in the consent agenda for your approval of the minutes from our October 10th regular meeting, October 11th special meeting, and then the approval of the bills in the amount of $589,894.10. So I have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I will move to approve the consent agenda.
Motion by Tawny, second by Kalen. Any discussion, Tawny?
No.
Kalen?
Nope.
Anybody else? All in favor?
I,
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. All right, next up, general business 5.1, consideration of approval of a comment letter for the United States Forest Service Monte LaSalle National Draft Revised National Forest. Maybe that's, I'm not reading that right. Draft Revised Land Management Plan Environmental Impact Statement. You have a letter in your packet with an agenda summary, and Alexi is going to present that.
Okay, I'm going to go over the thought process that went into the letter that you had for review. You've already gotten a pretty good overview of the city's involvement to this point, but I'll do a quick summary. So the planning process for a forest plan revision on this particular one for the Monte LaSalle Forest started in 2016 with kind of a pre-assessment and then going into assessment. The city of Moab commented in October of 2021, which you heard about earlier, and we have another opportunity to comment now until November 16th. This is the area that is of specific interest to us. The forest is much larger than this, involves other regions, but this is the area right around Moab. The letter was written having been given direction to staff to focus on the impacts to the city. So that would be especially watershed health, and both in terms of water quality and also stormwater management and air quality, primarily fire, but management of erosion could also affect dust. So Chuck and I discussed some of the issues that would be relevant to the city of Moab, and then I went to go through the draft environmental impact statement to look at what the city would want to do. So what they provided were a series of alternatives, starting with the existing conditions and then moving into four other alternatives, four total. And some of them they all cover some of the same things, like laws and regulations. Some of those things have to be included in any of the alternatives. And then some of the things, like some things are included in none of the alternatives, like none of them make oil and gas leasing, mineral withdrawal, or travel management decisions. Okay, so this is a gross summary of over 400 pages of materials that were provided. And it's just focusing on some of the things that were most relevant to watershed and airshed. The alternative A is no action alternative, which reflects the 1986 forest plan. Draft B, or alternative B, was a draft forest plan. C and D integrate some other aspects that were received during the public response period, and also from internal Forest Service review of the draft plan. There was the conservation alternative that was proposed or developed by 10 conservation organizations. We've already gone through some of the reasons why the Forest Service chose not to evaluate it. One of the things they did say was that they tried to move some of the emphasis from the conservation alternative into the other options. So when we were going through this, we tried to look at what would address the city's concerns in particular. So in that case, looking at B, managing dispersed camping helps with erosion and human waste and other things that would affect our watershed. Alternative C did do some accelerated management of fire hazard, and also it tried to restore wetlands faster, which would both be good for, again, for watershed, airshed. And the passive management plan did not allow new infrastructure for livestock grazing, which would help with erosion and also manage waste and things like that that could go into waterways. So those were some of the things that were addressed in the plan, the draft letter that you received for review, and I'll turn it over to you for your consideration.
Questions for Lexi?
I was just gonna thank you for working on it because we had the one in October and at the time, I think council worked on that one. So I don't know if I have questions right now. Do you want comments or discussion or only questions? I'll let someone else ask questions.
Or a motion?
I recalling what I did and going back and reading the extensive agenda summary from 2021 and the letter at the time, and then kind of reviewing what the county did at the time, and knowing how complicated NEPA and these plans are, and given some of the input we've gotten from the community, because I would, this is so intense, I would like a little more time, and because the deadline isn't until November 16th, I'd like some time to look at it and potentially work with another council member to make some edits to the letter, because I do think there are some concerns, as I understand them, related to maximizing what we thought would be in the plan versus what is on watershed impacts, climate, some of the other aspects that can impact soil and fire that will then feed into all of that. As we all know, these systems are all overlapping. And then just a few questions that I'd like to get settled about NEPA and this whole question of supplemental draft or yeah, I guess it is draft environmental impact statements. So I'll let someone else comment. But honestly, yes, I will make the first motion, and that would be to table to work on this until the November meeting and have an edited letter.
All right, we have a motion to table the approval of the comment letter until our next meeting, November 14th, with council members working on edits to present at that meeting.
One second.
Second by Luke. Any discussion, Ronnie?
No, not unless we want to really get into lots of detail. With
Well,
That's
We
probably
can
not
do
the
that at the
time.
next meeting if this motion
Yeah.
passes. Luke, do you have any discussion?
No, I just don't see a harm in kind of getting some more input from council and delaying this for next meeting.
All right, motion made by Ronnie, seconded by Luke. Do we have any other discussion from council? Kalen?
I appreciate your work on this. I've looked at the plan and DEIS and it's many, many pages and a little hard to parse the information, or a lot hard to parse the information. But having read it, even within their preferred alternative, it seems like the lack of standards on some issues may, they could be strengthened in a way that will support city goals in the future. So I'd like the additional time to take a look at it and work on some possible edits to the letter.
Great. Any other discussion? Jason?
No, well, my concern is that, you know, I've spent a lot of time reading this over the last few weeks from a different perspectives and from a couple different boards that I sit on. And as I read this, I was like, oh, this is pretty good. It's pretty middle of the road. We're protecting the watershed. My issue was with alternative D is alternative D is just so so large and so encompassing for primitive, you know, and while it is protecting watershed, even it doesn't, it encompasses areas that I think if you say we support alternative D, that it overlaps areas that are close to state trust lands where people have roads, have cabins, where people recreate, you know, and is a lot of people in here know I'm a big winter recreation person, and alternative D really cuts down winter motorized recreation, which is what I love. and so for me to vote on anything that's alternative D, you know, I feel it goes against some, you know, some areas in the LaSalle's that are appropriate for these activities. And by saying, you know, in our letter up there, it says, you know, livestock, no new infrastructure, but in the letter, it does say water quality, subsequent effects on water quality from motorized recreation and livestock grazing. So it does have it in there, even though up there it says livestock. And so I think we need to, and I think that I'm probably a minority on the council in this, but saying, you know, is that I do feel that we need to account for motorized recreation in the South. And so I would not be voting for this letter. And it sounds like I probably in the minority on the next letter, which is and so anyway, that's just my feelings on this, which I understand that we do need to protect the watershed. I think we can protect the watershed, and I think we can protect the viewshed while still allowing people the recreation in which they choose in the LaSalle Mountains.
Anybody else? Kaylin?
My intention was not to rewrite the letter to say, please do alternative D. So just if that's your concern, that wasn't my intention. It's-
Yeah. If I
Go ahead, Luke.
to me, this kind of like presents an opportunity. I appreciate all the time and effort, and from what it sounds like, there's a tremendous amount of effort that goes into trying to parse all these things. But at the end of the day, like we as a council have to like put our names like on the letter. And so to incorporate like feedback from Jason, we can potentially put something out that we can all agree on by highlighting what we do support overall and not necessarily highlighting things that we're against.
Connie, do you have anything? No. All right, we have a motion to table by Ronnie, seconded by Luke, to table this item until our next meeting, November 14th. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. If you guys, whoever's going to work on this, could give us a red line version, that would be really helpful. And then we'll get the red line and the clean version in the packet for the public to see.
Yeah. Do you have a date you want that by?
Well, Summer usually likes it by 8 o'clock on the Thursday morning before the meeting. However, if you get it to her by noon, don't tell anybody, she'll be okay with that. Yeah, but I'm a council member, just like everybody else. If, you know, we'll be flexible, but if you could get it to us by what did I look? It's the 9th of November.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And feel free to use staff like Alexi if you have technical questions. And I have some advice about how to kind of frame it. I think, Kaylin, you're on the right track where my recommendation was to say an alternative that you all prefer, and then talk about how you want to augment it or alter it instead of sort of, we can talk a little bit more about strategy and what I think is helpful to the Forest Service when they're getting this kind of feedback from a cooperating agency like the city.
Right.
So we can coordinate. I'm happy to help too. Written a lot of NEPA letters, so it might
Right.
be
It would-
fun.
Yeah, it would be nice if we can get consensus, knowing that we may not, but it always looks a lot better and stronger if all five of you guys to vote. For
Yeah.
a letter.
I guess one last thing I'll say is my understanding of process is, you know, you can put a lot of different alternatives in the draft EIS, and then you go to final EIS. And when you do the final, you can only pick stuff from a menu of things that was in the draft. So that's kind of the step we're in now. And then there'll be another comment period for the final. So
Great. Thanks, you guys. All right, next item. Thanks, Alexi. Agenda item 5.2, consideration of approval of a task order with Hanson, Ellen, and Lute for the Mill Creek NRCS Emergency Watershed Protection Project. And this is Chuck, and he's going to go over those projects. And this is basically a task order to move forward, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So back in February, we applied for a Emergency Watershed Protection Act program from the National Resource Conservation Service. And this task order is to allow our consultant to begin the process of engineering, permitting, geotechnical investigation, as well as come up with bid-ready documents. The amount of money as outlined in the agenda summary is on the order of $1.4 million. City's cost share on the agenda summary, I think, was $337,000 is the number. I can look that up exactly, but we can. But what I wanted to show you was the project locations and descriptions. So this has been vetted by the NRCS, the scope of work for this task order. So they're in concurrence with these activities. So if I can, I'll just take a minute, Dieter, please. So here's the overall view. You can see that this is the upper blue line is Mill Creek, the lower blue line is Pack Creek. This project is for the floods of 2022, which was Mill Creek, as opposed to the floods of 2021, which was Pack Creek. Essentially, there are 6 sites that we'd be working on. You know, some of the sites are longer than others. Typically, a site's no longer than 300 feet because of the permitting issues that you run into with the Corps of Engineers on grade going greater than 300 linear feet. But it seems fit for our purposes here anyway. First, please. So this is near the Dream Drive, and you can see the houses there and where Mill Creek comes behind those houses. The idea here is that the area is eroding away towards the homes. And so we designed gabion walls on the outside of Mill Creek to protect the homes from stream erosion. And we have you can see that the blue is just further is the floodway. Green is floodplain, the 100-year floodplain. Red or pinkish is the 500-year floodplain. This is from our adopted FEMA maps. Next, please, this picture. Yeah, that's what a gabion wall looks like. They're rock-filled baskets. It's not concrete. They're typically vertical. We're not saying that's exactly the design. I just wanted to give council an idea of what those look like. Gabion's a term of art and sometimes gets lost. I could call them rock and rail baskets. Next, please. Rotary Park. Rotary Park has some stream erosion between the 2 bridges at Rotary Park on the facing down river left side. And that was ineligible for funding from the insurance trust, which as you recall, that's where we're paying for some of the other repairs from our insurance policy, but they wouldn't pay for stream bank erosion. But here, it'll either be a gabion or bioengineered solutions. We'll evaluate those as we go through the process. You know, the bioengineered would be nicest there. The question is whether or not it'll satisfy the needs of withstanding the velocities in the 100-year flood. That's really what the issue is. You know, a picture there, Dieter. Yeah, there's again the area we're talking about 300 feet. This is not real useful, but this is the helicopter flight that I believe the sheriff's office did the day after that August 20th flood. And it just gives you an idea of the extent of the damages in there. Next, please. Next location is Shield Lane, or the Taylor homes are down there. The father and mother live in one house, and the son and his wife live in the next house. And here, picture please. This is the area. This is one way to think about it is this is the area downstream from Zach's parking lot, where Mill Creek went down to the, right there. You just hold that. That's the second bridge. That's the bridge that was installed in 2018 to the 10-year design level flow. And you can see how on the left-hand side of that picture, just as a reminder, it was pretty stunning to see it in the light of day, but that entire bridge was covered like it is there on the left part of the bridge. You can see that debris piled up there. That's already been cleared out. You can see the track go there. But what happened is the stream used to go down underneath that bridge, and because of all that debris clogging that bridge, it pushed the stream to the right, to the north, right towards the Taylor's homes. And you see now, and that's where the channel was. And if you look, Dieter, we'll try and put the cursor on there, but you can see their homes in the background at the very back of that picture right there. So you standing at the bridge, you can see how close it came, and it went right up to their floor. So this would protect that from happening again. And they've been involved with scoping this. We met with them and their consultant, and they'd be involved as we move forward. They're supportive of this project. This is 500 West, so downstream from where we were just looking at. This is the flood carried a huge amount of sediment down, like deposition from 3 to 6 feet in places. We could leave it there. In a lot of places it is being left there. But the idea here is you can see where the infrastructure, this is down where the old slack line used to be there on FAFA 500 West. That's the type of level of debris that we're talking about going back up towards the condos on Williams Way. We have a picture of, yeah, you can see the deposition and, you know, the impacts there. So that would clean up that area with debris. So it's basically a cleanup area as opposed to a structural solution. It's removing it. Next. And at 400 East, this is at Mill Creek again. So on the upstream side, you can see, if you'll next, yeah, those red lines there, there's 2 lines parallel to the blue line, to the blue floodplain. Those are gabion bank protection or gabion walls too, to protect both the underpass to the south as well as the homes to the north. And that's, you know, in that area during that flood, it backed up at the bridge. It did not overtop that bridge and went right to the very bottom of the bridge, but never went over. But it backed up, wiped out the infrastructure around the underpass. So this would protect both that underpass as well as those few homes there along the side. And then there's the area between 400 East and 300 South. And the idea there is to repair the existing drop structures. I'm sure you've all seen them, but there are multiple drop structures that I think used to be part of irrigation pullouts or takeouts, you know, back in the day. Not so much now, but the reason they're worth repairing is they've been there so long that they have established, we call them grade control structures, meaning the grade of the creek. So with those structures, it's maintaining a stable elevation of that creek bottom. If we were to take those out, the creek would do things like erode in places and deposit in places. And maybe we'd want that and maybe we wouldn't. This way, right now, we know where that stream bank was over the last, probably since the CCC, so 90 years ago. So we want to keep that established so it's a stable condition. So that's to repair these. As you can see, multiple ones were damaged. And they can probably be repaired as opposed to replaced. And I think that is all, but I appreciate you let me take the time to do that, but I thought you'd be interested in seeing the locations we were talking about because it's a substantial amount of money. But again, you've heard me say it before, but there is no free money on this stuff. So it's a question if we want to take advantage of the NRCS program and get some of their money to help us with some of our money.
Little bit of PTSD looking at those pictures. Brought back some scary memories.
Yeah, you know, real quick, I didn't want to scare us all, but you know, FEMA has done studies that you have 6 months to get things done because after 6 months, people forget about floods. And it's only been a little over a year, right? And
Right.
we're all moving on to something else, but we still got problems that we're trying to address. So
No,
you're
every
right.
time it rains, I get
Questions for Chuck? Kayla?
So some of these are targeted towards protecting specific homes, and those homes were presumably required. It looks like some of them are in the 100-year or 1%
Correct.
flood area. And so presumably they were required to build a ground floor at least a foot above.
Well, they're at least base flood elevation is what our current requirements are, though FEMA's looking at changing that to 1 foot above the base flood elevation.
Mhm.
But if those homes were built pre, I think it was 1993 when the city of Moab adopted the FEMA regs, but if those homes are older than that, then they would not be compliant with the current regulations. If they, the homes on 400 East are in compliance because they've been permitted since I've been here.
Yep.
The ones downstream from Zach's are much older than that.
So this is maybe a bigger philosophical question, but where we're spending government money to protect a few properties, how do we rationalize that? And, or do we ask the homeowners the property owners to chip in?
So what I've always been advised by legal counsel over the years is it's really difficult for us to go do a project for one person. If there's multiple people involved, then that's the public. Okay. I mean, honestly, I'm not trying to be a smart aleck. I'm just, trying to answer your question.
Yes.
But that could be a policy decision the council could, address on its own, but it fits the NRCS program. There's no other programs because we've tried to find ways to help folks who were in this situation. But as I looked at these and put these together, that's the question I always ask myself, is it more than one property? During the emergency, we have the ability to go in where there's one property, but for these kind of mitigation efforts, it's always, the rule is always, does it help more than one?
Mhm.
And I think all of these projects do.
Okay. And for the cleanup project, so that's removing vegetation and potentially excess deposition.
Mainly deposition and debris. It's not like we're going to go in and do logging of green stuff. It's picking up the stuff that was washed downstream.
And why do we need an engineering study of that?
It's not, that one's not so much an engineering study beyond the fact that we have to quantify how much material is there in order to put it out to bid. So
does that material have value as fill? It seems like not structural enough.
Not really. No, it's silt that's been washed downstream, it's sandy silts. It could be used for fill or some places a deep fill, but we don't have any place to store it. If we were going to take it and sell it, if that's what you're kind of thinking about. But the reason we'd engineer it is we have to get those contours back to the pre-existing conditions so that we can prove that we haven't harmed the situation by removing that debris, even though it seems like a no-brainer, for lack of a better word, seems obvious that moves out. But the reason to engineer it is because we need quantities and limits and contours to put that out to bid.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Chuck? Ronnie?
So I think I saw this is probably a 6-month project. Do you know when they would start?
If you approve it tonight, we'll give them a notice to proceed once the mayor signs the contract in the next couple of days. What they would start for this year probably is doing this. Well, they would start with a survey and geotechnical work first, and then start launching in the design.
Okay, and then just a question for you and Carly. I think the task order says $279,000 estimated cost, and then our motion has a slightly lesser amount. Do we care if those match?
Oh, it should have been the same one. Sorry about that.
Okay. And then I guess just reading through it, I got a few questions from people. So like one question, which I thought was good, it just helps me as a council member and maybe new people. So I understand NRCS, the EWP is specific to certain kinds of projects. I guess I was wondering, I got the question from some people like, oh, okay, are these sites specifically it, or what's the bigger picture of what we might need to do and what will that fall under? Will that fall under, I think somewhere, I was looking at the map for, sorry, scroll. In one of the maps, it talks about a bridge repair that someone else will do.
Yeah, so that's at Rotary Park,
Mhm.
I think is what you were referencing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you recall, from that flood, we tried FEMA and they said,
Right.
no, that we didn't meet their thresholds for damages. So no money from FEMA. So the other place where there's potential money after floods is the Natural Resource Conservation Service. So we went to them. But who's paying for the repair of the other bridges is the insurance trust. So that's who's doing that other work. But the insurance trust has told us they won't pay for things like stream bank erosion. So this project would pay for that. It's comes
Okay,
within the
so-
RCS's purview.
Just as a reminder, like that bridge referenced by Rotary, so that, do we have, just remind me, I just forgot a timeline on that insurance money coming in and repairing that?
Sure. We are at 60% design for all of those bridges. We waited about the last 4 to 6 weeks for the insurance company to review the 60% plans. I got their report back Friday, and we're moving towards 100% plans. So I'm hoping that'll happen this year, but it's kind of a heavy lift, and with, holidays coming, even consultants get time off on holidays, and I expect that after the first of the year sometime, we should have those 100% plans available. And then the idea then would be to go out to bid for construction for that permanent repairs.
So for someone thinking big picture and just trying to think in their mind, keep track of everything that's going on at the same time. We have this, we have the stuff we hired Rim to do. We have the bridge repair. We have, I guess we've talked to about kind of a flood or just larger flood management plan. So I guess for someone trying to think of all of the moving parts that might layer onto each other, are there other things I'm leaving out? Just maybe to help the people who come after me contemplate everything that might be going on.
One of the things that we just got word on within the last couple of weeks is there's an opportunity for FEMA to come in and do a watershed restoration plan, is their term, for Mill Creek. And really, it's more of a high level water master plan, and that would be at no cost to us. The reason, so that's a good thing. Maybe the less good thing is FEMA will be managing the project and the consultants. I gave them some suggestions on consultants that we like, meaning they have local experience as opposed to just they're working out of Chicago or something, not that they would do that, and they were open to that suggestion. So if that comes through and we won't know for a month or two, that would include, the stuff from rim to rim, the stuff that we're doing here. But in the meantime, we're taking this almost like the way I view it is almost triage, in a medical ward where we're hitting the hot spots, like we hit all the bridges first. And now we have this opportunity to get some of these other hot spots taken care of. And the other thing I was going to say is that I'll get back to you on that.
Oh, it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, like
others.
one of,
I think,
yeah.
too, that we're doing. So there's Pack Creek, which is from a different flood.
Oh yeah, that's the EWP for Pack Creek.
For Pack Creek. If you recall, we also, I can't remember, it was a letter for some improvements to the dams up on the east bench. What was
Yeah,
that?
so that's a FEMA, not a brick grant, but it's very similar to the brick grants. And yeah, we applied to get we have those 3 large detention basins up here to the east of town coming off the rim. And so they need engineering, permitting, and construction dollars. And we've applied for the engineering and permitting, and we think that'll be a go. It'll be 80-20 split. But all the FEMA stuff got put on hold for insufficient funds because all the money, not all the money, but a lot of money went to Hawaii.
Oh.
So, and we just heard recently, they think they're going to lift that, meaning they have the money now to fund the normal programs. the FEMA one is a normal program, but after the emergency in Hawaii, they said we got to divert resources over there. But now I think they're cycling back and saying they've got the money for that.
Yeah, and then we're also helping out with the county and the like feasibility study for the flood warning system that they're initiating. We're about to pitch in, like I mentioned last week, in the development of the hazard mitigation plan for the county as well. So we're just like hitting it from all sides is a really holistic approach to kind of storm recovery and mitigating future issues.
So for residents who watched the last flood happen and, some of the jams that happened by bridges and stuff, should we be thinking that the modeling that's going on and the improvements will put us back to where we were before that flood in terms of kind of capacity and planning, and it'll still allow, we know only so much water can pass under the bridges. So at a certain point, it still will go on the streets. Are there any changes? Yeah, I guess I'm just asking if we had a similar size flood, could we expect it to act the same, or are there contemplated changes that are somehow trying to direct flows differently? Or
Okay, so the August 20th, 22 flood was right at the 100-year flood. I mean, it was based on lots of evidence. It was essentially a 100-year flood, not just because it was a big flood, but it literally was the 100-year flood. The bridge that I showed you earlier by the Taylors with all that debris, that was built to a 10-year design frequency. So if the same flood came along for that bridge, it might not stand it. I'm not sure we'd get the same debris because it's been flushed down. So a lot of it has. But I would expect that bridge to be overtopped and damaged. If there was the exact same amount of debris, the same thing would happen. But my sense is it wouldn't be the same amount of debris because it's been flushed out of those canyons. And the 300 South Bridge that clogged and was one of the primary reasons downtown got flooded. That's a 50-year design frequency. So if the same flood came along, that bridge may very well be overtopped. But the reason that was overtopped also was because the debris was caught up and covered up the opening, so the water couldn't go through, so it jumped up and over and out. So the direct answer is if it was the same flood, those two locations wouldn't be any different.
okay. And then I did have a question about, I guess Team Rubicon came in and worked in that area between Shields and, if I remember right, 500, and we have a big debris pile. And I think there had been some discussion, right, about maybe reuse of the wood or something. So I wasn't sure beyond the wood, or maybe I think, like everywhere, there's a bunch of kochia down there. How critical is that section after the pile? Is the pile the main thing, or you're saying the deposition is a real concern as well?
That should be addressed. That debris that's down there should be addressed either by burning it or removing it, because it could float downstream in another big flood.
But what you're contemplating for that section doesn't include that debris, right? There's a different plan for that. So I should think of that section between Shields and 500, the idea being deposition removal in that stretch.
You mean the work that Kara did?
No, I'm just thinking what we're proposing when we look at the map. of the
Okay.
big
Yeah,
chunk of
it's
property between Shields and.
It's primarily the deposition removal, the sediment.
Okay.
And if there's debris in there, that'll also be removed. And there is debris in there, but it's not those big piles you're talking about. I
Okay.
know what you're talking about.
Okay,
Those are-
yeah, no, I was trying to get clear on plans for different stuff. What determines how much of the debris you remove?
The engineering,
Okay,
which will have the existing contours, we'll go in and figure out what the current contours are. And if it's 6 feet here and 3 feet over there, then that tells us what level we need to cut down to get back to where we were, which is
Okay.
really what we want to do, because it's all mapped FEMA floodplains. And we'll get, by the way, we'll get no-rise certifications out of this as well, which we need to do, which means that the activities we're going to undertake don't worsen the flooding.
okay. Is there any opportunity to do anything with some of the stuff around the high school or upstream of the 400 East Bridge? I guess there's a bunch of, down vegetation and. Yeah.
You know,
I just didn't know, not being an engineer, I don't know what prioritizes, one area.
the NRCS came out
Okay,
and met me, after the flood, and we spent a couple of days walking this,
kind of a risk management.
and they helped prioritize what would fit within their program.
Okay, yeah,
that being said, if we went out to bid and there was low bid, less than a cost estimate, and there was money left,
Yeah,
we could probably add on a few places for debris removal, but the way contracts are these days, I'm not predicting that.
yeah. I guess my last two questions are just with something like this, when it mentions the stakeholders, obviously they're private property owners, like who will be the stakeholders?
So the people at Dreamy Drive, those people, we've already talked to them. We went to the field with our consultant, and met with all those people, the Taylors down there. And they are also the Taylors there to the west, going towards 500 west. Those are the people who are really the private property people. You know, we'll meet with the Parks Department as part of the Rotary Park repairs, you know, when we look at gabions versus bioengineered solutions to make sure it's stuff like. So it's
Okay.
people who are directly affected by that.
Yeah, can we make a plug for bioengineering only from seeing kind of urban creeks where I kind of know the lifespan of gabion on its own is much less than if you get some root mass in there and put some grasses or willows in there. So
Oh, I can tell you that at Rotary Park, our first choice would be the bioengineering. It's just a question of whether or not it'll withstand those velocities that I was talking about. And I'm not sure they will until we do the analysis, because during that flood, they were 12 to 15 feet per second, which is fast.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure. Typically it costs more to the bioengineering, but yeah, that'll be our first choice. And if that, that works, that's what we'll come back and as the alternative. If it doesn't work to satisfy the flood protection requirements, then we'll probably pursue the gabions, or riprap.
or I mean, I know sometimes they put, willows or grasses in the gabion. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Okay, thanks. That was it.
Thanks, Ronnie. Any other questions for Chuck? Clarification. So our agenda summary says 278, 829, 66, and the task order says 279. So which one is it?
The task order would be
Okay.
best.
All right, so I'll entertain a motion. And the amount that you're considering is 279,000.
I move to approve the attached Mill Creek NRCS Emergency Watershed Protection Program task order with Hanson, Allen and Luz in the amount of $279,000 and authorize the mayor to sign it.
Motion by Tawny, second by Luke. Any discussion? Tawny? Luke? This is anybody else? Roll call vote. Jason?
Aye.
Ronnie?
Hi.
Luke?
Aye.
Kalen?
Aye.
Tawny? Aye. Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. And all the candidates out there, this will be a question at the candidates forum on Monday, so I hope that you got all of that.
Projects. There'll be a quiz.
All right. Next, we have Michael and Caitlin Myers to present the Moab area 2023 Moab area affordable housing plan. And Michael's going to start, and then Caitlin's going to give you a brief presentation.
Okay, I'll just give a quick introduction and go over where we are right now, and then turn it over to Caitlin. So the Moab area affordable housing plan was last updated in 2017. A lot's happened since that time, and the housing task force got together, which I believe Caitlin is the chair of that task force, vice chair. And several other people, including Kalen. I participated in a few meetings. Our planning director, Corey Shurtleff, was involved. People from HASU, Housing Authority, and many others as well. People from the community were involved and did a lot of really good work and put together the plan that Caitlin's going to show you tonight. There's a lot of data involved in this. In fact, we could spend days and days just talking about the data and going ooh and ah, because it's basically kind of like confirming all of our suspicions about housing and how things have risen, prices have risen, and occupancy has gone down and things like that. But there are some action steps that we're asking you to look at tonight in order to potentially approve those, because eventually we hope to adopt this plan as part of the general plan. For the city as an advisory document. The Planning Commission has reviewed reviewed this document. They were given the same presentation. They had a few questions, but ultimately recommended approval of the document to the city council. Caitlin's going to go over a couple of the areas where there's still a couple of questions about how to approach, but again, ultimately they did approve the document or recommend approval of the document going forward to the city council. Tonight, the document is after the presentation, you'll have a chance to ask questions and deliberate and make a decision tonight if you'd like to, or we'd be ready to get any other information that you may require and do this at another meeting, but it is available, or it is up for action tonight if you choose to do that. And with that, I'll turn it over to Caitlin.
Thanks, Michael. We also have Noelle Janu. Did I say that right?
You sure did.
On the call. She is the secretary of the Housing Task Force and was the AmeriCorps Vista heavily involved with putting this together. So, yes, I am the vice chair of the Housing Task Force. Unfortunately, Laura Harris, who is the chair, couldn't be here. She and Ben Riley are actually traveling up to DC for a national housing conference right now. So Noelle and I are here to present in her stead. Going through the housing plan generally, as Michael said, the purpose of this document is to be both a source of data and analysis for grant writing and for policy making, budgeting, programming, that kind of thing, but it also includes an action plan to direct Moab City, Grand County, Housing Task Force, and other housing partners to work together to achieve our community's housing goals. So the plan goes through general housing terminology that we use in the housing world, has general key findings within the plan, goes through demographic and housing data, and outlines some of the housing efforts to date since the 2017 plan. And then provide some analysis on that demographic housing stock, housing needs analysis, and finally goals and actions. The purpose, as Michael said tonight, is to go through the goals in the action plan, but we are going to talk through some of the major data points, both for your awareness, kind of narrow down some of the most important key findings in that document, but also to educate the public on that. So, before we dive into that, I just wanted to also give an update on where we're at with the plan. We have been working on data and writing related to this plan for the last couple of years. I mean, really kind of started with Kaylin back in 2020, but there were other priorities back then. And so in earnest, we've been working on providing this update for the last 2 years. We received some community input. Most notably, we did an employer housing survey at the 2022 Business Summit, and we have been working on doing a lot of internal workshops to really hone in the language and specifically the action plan the last few months. So we brought this forward we're bringing this forward between Moab City and Grand County at the same time. This is a Moab area housing plan. And so this is something that the Housing Task Force would like feedback on tonight, is whether Moab City and Grand County want to have a united plan specifically related to the action plan, whether that is the same between both entities or if there are some small differences between the two. This will be adopted as an attachment, an advisory document to the general plan. And so this, it can be different. I think for cohesiveness, it makes sense to have it be pretty much the same. So that's some feedback that we would like tonight. But yes, we did get a favorable recommendation from the Planning Commission a couple of weeks ago. We presented this to the Grand County Commission in a workshop at the beginning of October and are scheduled to present to Planning Commission next Monday. And then adoption with the commission will be later in November or December. So I will pass it off to Noelle to go through data.
Yeah. Is my audio all working?
Mhm.
All right, great. Sorry, I was hoping to be there in person, but I caught kind of a cold and didn't want to
get you all sick. So I'm here at home. But just wanted to take some time to go through some of the data and research that went into this plan. Obviously, we're not going to go through it all because there's just pages and pages and pages, but we pulled out some of the key takeaways that we think is important for y'all to know. And I'll just kind of run through some of them, mainly that the Grand County area median income for a family of 4 in 2022 was around $70,000. And the average annual wage for the year before 2021 was 40,000-ish. Another big stat was that in terms of tourism related jobs, that they account for about 57% of all jobs in the county. There were around 1,419 people living in poverty in 2021. And according to the local homelessness council, there were an average of 57 individuals who reported homelessness each month in 2022. Kind of touching on our housing stock a little bit, we have mostly single family housing units. It's about 60% of our housing stock. And in 2022, there were 582 homes that had some sort of occupancy restriction. So that's either that the housing is income restricted based on AMI or another calculation, or based on primary residency or income. And then there were also some homes that were income restricted at the time of construction, but that income restriction only lasted a couple of years. So we don't really know who's living in those houses anymore, but that's still a really large number of houses that went towards and are continuing to go towards affordable housing. And then one more big statistic is based on the assessor's office tax records. 67% of homes in Grand County are primary residences, while the remaining 32% are secondary residences. We also wanted to highlight some of the big things that have happened since the 2017 plan was adopted. There have been policies that were passed by both the county and the city that are advancing affordable housing initiatives, such as the alternative dwelling overlay, the high density housing overlay, and the actively employed housing ordinances. In terms of housing development, organizations like the Housing Authority, Community Rebuilds, and the Land Trust have developed a lot of affordable housing units that are deed restricted. Here it says we have 73 permanently deed restricted units. That was in 2022. I think there are more now. And they're still continuing to expand all of their different programming. And there are a lot of efforts being done to expand our emergency and transitional housing options by MVMC, Seek Haven, Moab Solutions, and the local homelessness council. So far, we do not have an emergency shelter other than the Seek Haven shelter, which is the only one in town that is reserved for survivors of domestic violence, and that often is full and has very limited bed capacity. So they're doing really good work to expand other options for emergency and transitional housing. So the needs analysis section of this plan really goes into, it uses data and modeling to detail what and where the greatest housing needs are in our community. So this graph shows how the average housing values and median sales prices have increased since 2015, with really a sharp uptick in 2020. And last year, the median sales price rose to $625,000, which is higher than the average home value, showing how hot the housing market has been here.
Yeah, and I would jump in here really quick. As we're not through all of 2023, but just as a note, our housing median sales price has gone down. We're back in the mid fives again. But I have heard from realtors that we are mostly seeing movement in our market above $1 million. I think that's just due to interest rates, and it's just, yeah, sales numbers in general are low compared to the last couple of years.
Yeah, so this graph is really showing how housing prices have been increasing a lot faster than wages have been. And
based on our calculations of affordability, and we're here assuming that affordability is a household is spending 30% or less of their income on their housing costs. So according to those calculations, a household would have to make a little under $150,000 in order to be able to purchase the median home in Grand County, which is a lot of money. And that also equates to an hourly wage of $71 per hour if there's only one wage earner in a household. In comparison, the average hourly wage is a little over $19 an hour, and that equates to $40,000 annually. So you can see there's a really big discrepancy between what people make and what they need to make in order to buy a house. And this slide here really goes to further illustrate the gap between average wages and what you need, the income needed to purchase a house. We've put together a couple different scenarios that describe the average wage for different types of workers in our communities. For example, this first one shows that even if you had 4 people who worked in the food service or accommodations industries, even if they pooled together all of their money, they still would not be able to buy a house, let alone if you have the average teacher and the average scientist together. It's, you know, buying a house is really out of reach for them. Here we're breaking down how much people spend on their housing by income bracket. And so once again, going back to this marker of 30% of your income, if you're spending more than that, then you're considered cost burdened. And looking at households that make $50,000 or less, you're much more likely to be spending more than 30% of your income on housing, which is, yeah, just showing how housing costs are, sorry, distracted. Yep, it's bad. And this is also showing that based on your occupancy type, if you're renting your house or if you own your house but still have a mortgage, you are more likely to be paying more than 30% of your housing, 30% of your income on housing. And here, for reference, the 2017 plan had some modeling and projections that had a goal of by 2020, there needed to be 316 units, new units built in order to keep track with current population increases. And so we actually met that goal. This is showing that by between 2017 and 2020, there were 300, I want to say that's 70, I can't quite see on my screen, 79 units that were built. And we can also see the breakdown between the county and the city. However, 105 new units of these were deed restricted. So not all of these units were going to our local community members. Some were probably going to overnight rentals, but it's really hard to track where they all went and who's living in these houses now.
Yeah, and this is just strictly building department data. So this is just residential building permits. So you know, clearly we have continued to build. We've all seen that. We just highlight this to really show that we have seen a lot of movement in our market. We're still seeing construction, but a lot of that construction is not going towards local residents. And obviously we had a big jump in 2018, I think 2017, 2018. I think a lot of that can be accounted for overnight accommodations, residential building permits in particular.
Okay, Caitlin, I'll let you take it from here.
Great. So we have developed a housing need projection strictly based on population growth. We do know that the Moab area population growth is relatively stagnant. We've been at an average of about 0.43% population growth over the last 5 years. But even that said, our population will continue to grow and change. So this model that we've developed is assuming that we are going to basically take the last 5 or so years of averages based on population growth, breakdown of our income brackets, our spread of ownership versus residential occupancy. I do think that even within this, it's too early to really tell the ways in which the pandemic and kind of the aftermath of that is really going to influence us. So I think it would be really beneficial in the next couple of years when we have more data to go into that. But that said, we are projecting needing almost about 1,000 units over the next 7 years. As you can see, going back to this slide, we are still building about 100 units per year. That was kind of the projection back then. That is, as you can kind of see decade by decade, that is still a little bit how we're projecting this to go. And so, you know, also as a caveat, I think that reliably probably the 2030 numbers are most important, and I think that that should be the focus. I think that that's attainable, and that's most specifically what we're looking at with the action plan. Data becomes less reliable. It's impossible to know what actually is going to happen in 2040, 2050. And I would also note we have not done a comparative analysis of this compared to the water plan and the water work and how safe yield or anything comes into this. This is just strictly looking at, as we continue to grow, which we know we are going to, what does that look like and how do we need to plan to keep up with that? Within that 949, most of the valley, or sorry, most of this, I guess most of the valley Moab area, we're at about 2/3 ownership, 1/3 renter. And then we have a little bit of vacancy. So we did a little bit more analysis based on owner and renter occupation, and the demand on those units. As we continue to build, we're going to need to build at least half of our housing stock needs to go towards home ownership. That is the greatest demand. That's what we're going to continue to see. But we will also need to continue to build multifamily and or renter units. I also want to note the 17.2% vacancy rate. This is different from second home ownership. This is just interestingly, in the 2017 plan, our vacancy rate was actually at 27%. So we have dropped in our vacancy rate over the last 6 years. This vacancy rate is more so showing that we have greater demand on our housing stock than we did back in 2017. This means kind of at a commercial or development real estate level that as we're tracking even within residential multifamily, there are just fewer vacant options for people that are living and working here, particularly within our residential market. I think we feel that, but I also just wanted to note that this vacancy rate is a different metric. We're assuming that we will always have some housing that is sitting as it's shifting around. So mostly just wanted to note the point of this is that we need to continue to build owner and renter, and just know that some of those units will continue to sit vacant, but this number is different from second home ownership or overnight accommodations when it comes to this graph. As we look at income brackets, we need housing at all income levels. Particularly, I wanted to point out that for households that are making less than $25,000 a year, that is about a quarter of our need. In this projection, about 24% of our population is making $25,000 or less. I do think that we will start to see a shift in that, just based on wages going up and a lot of changes, but mostly to highlight that for residents that are earning under less than 35,000, we will still have a need for subsidized housing for those. That will continue to be through the Housing Authority, Community Land Trust, or other partners. But more so, I wanted to highlight at least half of those units need to be for households earning between 35,000 and 150,000. I think that is reliably in our workforce housing range. And most importantly, we don't really have much of a need for housing for residents that are making over 150,000. That is a smaller portion of our workforce, according to this data. However, obviously, as has been noted, that is mostly what we are seeing in terms of our housing prices. So just a reminder for needing to focus on subsidized and or otherwise deed restricted housing as we continue to build out.
Caitlin, can I ask you a quick question? So
Sure.
should I think of those as 2023 dollars or like adjusted for inflation in 2030? Just
That is, if we look at, so this chart is by decade. If we broke this out from 2023 to 2030 over the next 7 years, that is the number. In the slide before, by 2030, we need about 950 units, just based on population demand, and then breaking down the trends that we've seen in terms of our income breakdown, kind of where our population resides.
I think those are correct.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Current dollars. I
Okay.
totally
Yeah,
missed your
thanks.
question. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, those are current dollars. I also noted that the AMI, even within this, we need the majority of these units are projected below 150,000, even below the 75,000 threshold. That's about 700 units. So it just goes to show, even within our AMI, we have median is different than average, and so there's highs and lows on both sides of that. Any other questions on data before we go into? Yeah.
So I'm under the impression that there's currently some number of people that's not really counted who are living on public lands or in parking lots. And as code enforcement or opportunities on the surrounding lands become tighter, that might increase demand in a way that possibly isn't accounted for in this plan. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. Yeah, we do have, homelessness data, both situational and chronic, from the local homeless council. But it is really hard, especially in, places where we have a lot of wild land for people to live on. It's really hard to narrow down that number. This also doesn't take into account the share of cost burdenship or households that are doubled, tripled up in units, which we know is happening. This is just assuming a general household size and population growth. So that is a great point. We need to build and create housing options beyond just this demand of 900 units. Because we do have people within that are not accounted for in this graph that are already in this community and already living in substandard housing conditions.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but this plan is basing a lot of its projections based off of like the current status quo, correct? Like we have this many housing numbers, we project this much growth to happen. But with that, like our current situation already has a deficit of housing. And I know that's an incredibly hard number to get. This is really fantastic data. And I think like the type of information that I've been looking for to like help better inform my decisions. What other types of data would you like to be able to get that you potentially weren't able to get? Is there a way to identify like a current shortage, and what kind of support might be needed to get that type of data? So that.
Great questions. We'll talk about data in the action plan, and I think that this would inform that. But I think within our transitional seasonal vehicle or alternative living residents that are not going to be reported in a PIT count or a point in time count to report homelessness. That is data that we don't have. I honestly don't even know really where to begin on that. I think what it really comes down to is Moab and Grand County need to do like an extremely comprehensive housing study, basically like how we all fill out our census study and say, this is where I live. The census does take a lot of does take that information, but they also do a lot of calculations to kind of make up for it and average it out, especially as they're doing their year-to-year averages. So I think that that would be huge. That is the data ask, is to do like a really comprehensive, basically point in time count, especially within our existing housing stock. We talked about how within our housing stock, about 2/3 are primary residency and about 1/3 is secondary. We don't know for sure. That is just straight assessor's data that I think it would benefit us to take the time to go through and analyze whether parcels are being assessed properly. You know, we've had conversations with some people about how they could be renting out their home, but it's getting assessed as a second home because they didn't know that they could get the primary residency exemption on that. You know, kind of conversely, we don't know how many renters are in primary residency owned homes versus actual homeowners. I think that would be really useful to know what that breakdown is of owner occupied versus primary residency, but renter occupied.
Yeah, because I was thinking a little bit about that 1/3 number, or almost 1/3, because that's pretty staggering. And it made me think that like before kind of the tourist boom hit and everything, Moab started off with a base that was primarily like primary residences. And so for us to have gotten to 1/3 of secondary homes, that really makes me wonder just how much secondary home ownership and previously short-term rental development was outpacing primary residences for it to have gotten that bad. Like it has to have been significantly more. And I wonder how those trends are continuing, because I think if we potentially figure out a way to obtain those metrics, that could be a way by which we are able to evaluate the success of programs like our AEH and stuff like that, just to make sure that the things that we're actually putting into action are having the effect that we're hoping they are.
Absolutely.
I'd agree 100% with that. You know, you kind of look at it and go, by 2030, we need, what was it, 900 and some homes. And then the 1/3 of the homes is 850. You know, it's like, it's almost that whole, you know, we didn't have as many secondary homes, they'd be making up a lot of that housing for people who need it right now. That 900 or whatever, we need homes. We need it.
Yeah. I think even within some of that data, you know, pulling building permit data, as you all are aware with AEH, it's really hard to, or with other policies, a developer is going to pull a building permit for a residential unit. You don't know what that actual use is going to be. And so I think doing more long-term tracking, even within this housing plan update, this is the first time that we have talked more specifically about second homes. Rather, the 2017 plan talked about the vacancy rate, which we assumed at that time was inclusive of secondary home ownership, but wasn't. And we talked a little bit about short-term rentals, but yeah, I think more data tracking over time would be really useful.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, we can talk about data again later. So going through the goals and the action steps within the action plan, there are 5 categories, primarily focused on how, when, where housing is built. The first is supply, generally focusing on continuing to supply and diversify our housing options here. Second is stability, talking about physical and social stability for residents within those units. Third is subsidy or fiscal support, talking about for folks who are on fixed incomes or on lower incomes, how to continue to support residents or projects that specifically serve those people. Fourth is sustainability, making sure that they are climate resilient and are also fiscally sustainable over time. And fifth is data. Going more into supply, the 3 goals with these are to meet the housing needs projections included in this plan. So meeting that 950 goal in the next 7 years, increasing the diversity of housing stock and creating new housing options. And then even within that, I think this goal particularly applies to the city, is to increase ADU and infill development. The action steps with that, I won't laundry list these, but highlighting a few, generally just looking at everything that we do through the lens of housing, specifically looking at public-private partnerships and mixed use opportunities, density bonuses, and other ways for the city to continue to prioritize and support housing development through incentives and regulations. The second, stability. First goal is to preserve local housing options in perpetuity, including the second goal, increasing the percentage of primary residence homes from 67% to 80%. Goal 3 is to increase the number of deed restricted homes by almost 1,000 units. And goal 4 is to decrease the number of cost burden households. This was a big conversation point at the Planning Commission. And so that's something that we particularly would like feedback on here within this goal 2, talking about how to continue to track and support our share of primary residential homes. So within conversations with, and Luke and Michael, I'm sure if you want to chime in on this, we've kind of talked about 2 different options. I think that increasing the percentage of primary residential homes is both talking about continuing to preserve our existing housing stock, but also to address future development as we continue to build, making sure those are primary residential. Do you want to lead this?
Yeah, I just want to make it. If you'd like to talk about this, I think the goal is good. We're trying to increase primary residences, but we kind of get stuck on the percentages. What do the percentages mean? We know we want them to go up, but what's the right percentage? So the question is for the city council, how would you like to see a goal like this read? Would you like to be general in terms of increase the percentage of primary residences, or increase, or more specific, like increase the percentage to an actual percentage? And generally speaking, if you put that in a plan, you usually have something to back that up. And so what does that percentage mean? 80% feels good, but what does it actually mean? I would lean more towards, let's increase it. Let's continue to work to increase it, and potentially even do an analysis of what the right percentage is for our community. And that wouldn't, and adopting a more general goal wouldn't prevent you from doing that and eventually adopting an actual percentage.
Yeah, I know in that conversation, I'm always for more data, so I kind of requested both, because I think they can really track 2 very different things, where we can increase the number of primary residences by like building new homes, but with some of the percentages, I think can show us like the development trends and everything, but they don't necessarily give us an accurate number of housing stock, because we have situations like where we had the trailers renovated into the condos, where those housing units got removed from the stock and potentially less units came in. Yes, they might have been developed at a ratio that is more primary. So yes, we've developed more percentage wise, like more primary residences, but we might have actually gone down in new primary units. So I think those 2 different metrics, if they can be captured, can really help paint a more robust and clear picture of like trends within the housing market.
Go ahead, Keelan.
I agree with what you're saying, and I would favor the phrasing of the first goal because it doesn't tie the goal to additional development. Not that there won't be additional development, but because of the limitations of land in the city and water throughout the valley, it seems like the first phrasing is more flexible, and it also accounts for the work towards that goal of a program like Vale and Deed, where you convert existing units as opposed to just relying on new development.
That's a good clarifying question. When you say the first one, do you mean the first one in red or?
The first one in red. yes.
Okay, okay. Just check.
I honestly don't think we're gonna be able to give you any direction tonight, so I think that we should probably continue to move on with the action steps and then have a more deeper discussion next week or at our next meeting. You know, feel free to ask questions, but I just don't feel like we're gonna be ready to really have a deep discussion tonight.
That's great. I'll just go through the final few. I think that that works really well anyway, because this will go before our county planning commission and commission in the next few weeks. And so to get their commentary on this as well would be helpful. With instability kind of related to those goals, we've already started talking about this with city staff, but we've talked about creating a community-wide deed restriction administration program, continuing to increase the time frame of deed restrictions themselves, and creating a voluntary deed restriction program for existing housing stock, just in terms of protecting that primary residency. This also includes a good landlord program to preserve our long-term rental units and create more transparency and better living conditions, better relationships between landlords and tenants. And also suggest exploring housing mitigation plans for new developments that propose the demolition of existing housing units, particularly naturally affordable housing units like trailer parks that we've seen in the last few years. The fourth goal is subsidy third goal is subsidy or fiscal support, with the goal of identifying funding streams to support affordable housing development. Action steps include Moab City and Grand County allocating ongoing amounts of money into their affordable housing funds. For the city, that would be the Wahoo. There's existing funding in there, but that funding stream has currently been closed. Also suggests exploring policies and programs that source funding from other entities, creating more partnerships to bring in funding here. And also, this is a specific request from the Housing Task Force, but for the city and county to come together to budget resources to draft the next housing plan. This housing plan has been produced by the Housing Task Force in 2017, voluntary staff time and or city or county actual staff time. And so this is a request from us to you, is to hire a consultant to do this moving forward. Sustainability generally, we were talking with Alexi about, I won't go too much into these, but we have requested feedback from Alexi on both these goals and on the action plan. But generally this is focusing on cost-effective efficiency measures with current and existing housing. And yeah, the final one is, so we will have updates from Alexi on sustainability, trying to combine some of the goals in the sustainability plan. And then finally is data, continuing to update and maintain affordable housing data, continuing to build on the data that we do have. We are working on creating an affordable housing dashboard, which will include this so that it is live and easily accessible to the public. And we plan to update the housing plan every 5 years. And I believe this is not specifically within the action steps in this plan, but you know, we've also contemplated Housing Task Force doing more regular updates to elected bodies on progress. That's all I have for you.
That's a lot.
It's it is a lot.
Nice work, Noelle and Caitlin and Laura. Great job. Do you guys have any questions for Noelle and Laura? I think I'm going to.
I just have one quick one.
Yeah, I'm going to suggest that we table this and maybe perhaps have a workshop to really dig into the action steps. I think there's just too much for us to really figure out this evening. So anyway, but I would, while Caitlin and Noelle are here, I think it's a great opportunity for you guys to ask the questions that you need so you can make the decisions to support the actions that they're recommending. Ronnie, go ahead.
Oh, my question is actually a data question. Can you remind me, Caitlin, do we have a list, either at the city or the county, but ideally that would cover, the, all of Grand County that kind of shows us not only how many deed restricted units we have and how they're deed restricted, but actually when those restrictions run out. So we kind of can watch keep track of the timeline of, yeah.
We do,
Yeah.
there's we didn't show that tonight, but there's a table in the housing plan, in the housing efforts to date that has that list.
Okay, I thought I saw like kind of the units and what they were restricted for, but maybe not when they run out. Is that part? I can't remember. Is that in there? The date that they run out when the restriction runs out?
Should be in there.
Okay.
Yes. And it also notes, like, for example, self-help units are one-time income restriction. I would also note with that, we're reporting 73 permanently deed restricted units. This is taking into account actual construction. This is not including Arroyo Crossing or HDHO or AEH projects that have been approved or in entitlement process, but haven't been built out. This is strictly already constructed.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Okay.
No, I just really impressed with this presentation. I know a lot of nonprofits in town use the housing plan to apply for grants. I used it a lot. I used the 2017 one a lot, and this is very, very impressive to see the significant amount of more work that was done and the data that you were able to collect. So I think this is beneficial for us as a council and as a county commission, but it's also really great information for a lot of our nonprofits to help them bring more funds into our community. So thank you.
So I'm assuming you're not ready to make a motion to approve. Maybe you are.
No, but I'm much more familiar with the plan.
Well, I'm looking at you, but I'm talking to everybody.
But I mean, seems like the council should,
Yeah.
someone else should make the motion to when the council is ready.
Right.
I can make a motion to table this.
And how long do you want to, how do you want to move forward? Do you want to have this as a separate agenda item at one of our next two meetings? We only have two meetings. I know that the task force would like the county to weigh in. I feel like we can go ahead and make our consideration and vote on this before the county commission. If there's any changes, we can always amend, because their process, I know, may take longer. Because they're just going to their planning commission in November, the end of November. So I do.
It's next Monday. It's the 30th.
Oh, I thought it was November.
That's what
Okay.
Lisa said.
Anyway, I feel like we can continue to move forward. The county can move forward. I don't know that we need to do it at the same simultaneously, but it would be great if we could, work through these action steps together and then make a motion to support it. So do you want to do that at our next meeting? We've got a big agenda for our next meeting. We could
We
do
have
it. in-
workshops for Parks Master Plan and Sustainability Plan coming up too.
Yes. Keelan.
On the master agenda list, there's a special meeting at the end of November, which is just to certify the election results, I believe.
Yes,
So might we take time then?
that's not a bad idea.
What is the date?
The 28th. I do know that the county is planning to do a meeting that day, but we could do it at the noon hour. That's where we were, Summer, weren't we planning to do the canvas, the vote at noon? But that's gonna be 5 minutes. We could take an hour and go through this. Would that work, Carly?
That works for staff, certainly. It's not Thanksgiving, it's the week after Thanksgiving,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Are you guys good with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so what do you include to consider at a special meeting on November 28th?
I move to table the consideration of the adoption of the 2023 Moab area housing, affordable housing plan update to November 28th at a special meeting.
Great, thanks, Tawny. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Kaylin. Any discussion, Tawny?
Mm-mm.
Nope.
Kaylin, anybody else? Do you guys have anything you want to add?
No, I was just going to say it would be great if it wasn't November 14th, because I would love to come back with a perspective, be able to present all of these action items from the perspective of staff and be able to
Okay.
talk about what the impact is to the
Mm-hmm.
city.
And the 28th works for you
Yes,
then?
that does work.
Very good. All right. Motion to table the consideration of the adoption of the 2023 Affordable Housing Plan made by Tawny, seconded by Kalen. We will further discuss on the 28th of November at a special meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you guys for all your work.
Thanks,
Very well
y'all.
done.
I know that was a
Thank
lot to
you.
get through, so thank you.
All right. Item point 6, city manager update.
Good evening. I have a short list this evening. Just a couple of reminders of some items that I mentioned during the last meeting. First, open enrollment for a change to trash and recycling services ends next Tuesday. Contact the treasurer's office if you want to make a change to those services. Another reminder for next week, the ballots for the city council election will be made available starting next week. So watch for them in your mailbox. You can mail them back to the city. They'll be, pre-addressed, or you can drop them off at the city recorder's office with Summer, and I believe also Grand County Clerk's office. The Sustainability Action Plan Open House will be held November 1st at the Grand Center from 4:30 to 6:30, just as a reminder. And then we hope to have something to report by the meeting in November or December when we bring it to you for a workshop. So that's rapidly finishing. So is the Parks Master Plan. We're getting a draft out to the Technical Advisory Committee for Parks Master Plan this week. And just some good news, I wanted to update you on the Woody's retaining wall construction. It should be finished in the next couple weeks. We've had some residents wondering if we can open up the bridge during the weekends. That was supposed to be happening, so we're reminding the contractor that should be opened. So thanks for everyone alerting us that wasn't occurring. And that's all I've got.
Thanks, Carly. Moving on to council reports, and we'll start with you, Kaylin, because we know where you were last week.
It wasn't attending yet another meeting.
Real sunburned.
I don't have any meetings to report, but on the topic of flood mitigation, this isn't city business, but you might be interested. 3 summers ago, flooding exposed, there's 3 natural gas transmission pipelines at least that come through the valley. And 3 summers ago, one of them in the very lower end of Mill Creek was exposed. It was too shallow. And so it's been subject to hanging in air and subject to flooding. But the owner is just as of this week doing the work to do horizontal boring to put it significantly deeper under Mill Creek. And another one of the pipelines in the major flooding 2 summers ago was also exposed as the Mill Creek cut into the bank and expanded a meander. Remains to be, and they've done temporary measures, like basically giant sandbags to cover that up, but remains to be seen how that will be dealt with, since it's a much longer potential exposure.
Is that it?
That's the report from King Creek.
Great, thank you. That's interesting to see that down there. All right, Ronnie, are you ready? You want me to?
Yeah, no, it's okay. On the mayor may have some stuff on this too. So, on October 11th, we had a meeting with, leadership, over at DOE at the UMTRA site, to discuss some questions that the Site Futures Committee had, just about, kind of our vision moving forward, and if staff at leadership saw any potential problems with those plans, and just to ask some ongoing questions. We don't have time to get into them now, but it was a good meeting. We're gonna have more frequent meetings with the leadership at Department of Energy probably 4 times a year as we move towards closure. And they're going to start generating some maps, for example, so we can look at infrastructure at the site and what the city and county might want to see stay, whether it's old buildings or wiring, electricity, yada yada. Okay, on the 12th of October, so at that DOE meeting was the mayor and Restaurant Coke and Mary McGann. And then the next day, Mary McGann and Russ and Amy Tendick from the Park Service and I went over to Grand Junction to Las Colonias for a tour of their old mill site and the park that they have created and all the facilities. I've reported again before about being there, but this was Amy and Mary's first time. So really good tour. I think exciting for them to see all of the amenities that they were able to add over time in Grand Junction. If anyone has questions, they can ask me. I had a Utah League of Cities and Towns Legislative Policy Committee meeting on the 16th of October. On the 17th of October, there was an EMS board meeting and Jason wasn't able to attend. So I won't get into too much other than we're on a budget committee together with Taryn Kay from the school district. And basically we're just moving forward with our budget for the year. Some exciting things happening in terms of, just trying to have more of a vision for long-term retention of staff and really working with staff about some of the things that they're looking for. I did learn, which was interesting, that the school district has paid parental leave. So you learn interesting things just from other employers in town as you're having discussions. October 18th to 19th, I traveled over to Vail with our sustainability director and Sustainability Vista. And Carly was there too for the Mountain Towns 2030 summit of kind of looking at climate solutions that are happening largely in the Intermountain West, but really it's larger now. The event sold out this year, 500 people, including Vail's sister city, a delegation from their sister city in Japan. There's way too much good and exciting stuff happening there to report on here, but suffice it to say, I think if we're looking towards leaders in the nation who are planning both economically and then socially, environmentally, just for the resiliency of their residents, for the future of how to adapt and how to pay for it and what can be changed. Really exciting stuff happening in Colorado. There is some stuff we can do in Utah, Washington State. And so I will try and summarize some of the workshops I went to for next time, and Carly might have stuff to report, but some interesting things on decarbonization, electrification that cities and towns are doing. Then also we had a workshop just looking at the housing that is happening in Dillon, Colorado on administrative property that was owned by the Forest Service. We had some interesting stuff just about waste reduction and minimization. Just some reminders about all of the funding that's available through the Inflation Reduction Act and the oh, help me out, Carly, the BIL, the BLI.
Yeah, it's mostly about IRA.
Yeah. And so just I'm hoping that at least some people in Utah will take advantage of some of those things, because you can't a lot of people just kept referring back to the chance of electrifying your school buses, just how beneficial that can be for especially for kids who are, as everyone reminded us, at tailpipe height. I did, as a result of being there, miss the October 19th WISA meeting. So I've asked them to just tell me if they need anything else. Just being probably the council member in the neighborhood of the ball fields. I heard a lot of people just say great things about Scouts on the Rocks and the powwow out at Old Spanish Trail Arena, because I know they're both happening this weekend, and the events at the museum. I did have one question that arose just for the city team on events was, it sounds like the ball field lights, which can be exceedingly bright, were maybe on all night Friday, and I don't know if that was a security thing, but the ask was, next time, do we have to leave them on all night, or could we maybe have fewer lights? And then just a question about idling vehicles. Is there, maybe a way? Yeah.
It was probably just an oversight.
Yeah.
I don't know why it would have to be on all night,
Yeah.
although I'm just speaking off the cuff.
Yeah. October 20th, I attended the county's Water 101 Water and Climate Science Workshop with Dr. Jack Schmidt and Mike Dunaway and Tom Lockmer. The county did record it. The recording should be up soon. I strongly recommend that anybody look at that. Lots of just exceedingly good data. A lot of it comes from US Bureau of Reclamation and the USGS. I think is good to add to your pool of knowledge about water in the valley and what's coming. And then today, Mary McGann asked me to chair the Moab Tailings Project Steering Committee without getting into it too much. And the mayor may want to just add things, but in September, let's see, on Thursday, it sounds like this week, if I got this right, we hit the 14 million ton mark. And we had thought, we pretty much have 16 million tons. We got about 2 million tons to go. There will be a celebration of moving another million tons, probably in December. Yeah, you can remember, Mayor, if there's something after that. I think that's it.
Thanks, Ronnie. Luke.
I don't have too much, just attended a meeting with the mayor and then attended the powwow this past weekend, which is a really great event, and excited to see that it's kind of becoming an annual thing.
You went to the planning commission meeting.
Oh yeah, that was a very vibrant discussion where we got into some more of the nitty-gritty details, and yeah, just really appreciated the planning commissioner's feedback throughout the conversation, and once again all of the work that the housing task force put into getting everything prepared and even like a little bit more tightened up, I see, for this presentation.
Thanks, Luke. Tawny.
Let's see. I attended a Canyonland Healthcare Special Service District meeting. It seems so long ago. And the biggest thing that we're working on in that is it's our budget season. I attended Seek Haven's DEI training, and I went to the chamber lunch last week. I went to the senior center while they had lunch on Friday, which was really fun and eye-opening, and that's a population that I think sometimes we neglect. I did go to the museum's display on dyeing wool with natural fibers, which was interesting, and I was absolutely shocked. My husband thought it was interesting. So, and we also went to Scott's on the Rocks and did a little campaigning everywhere I went. So that's it.
Jason. Thanks, Ronnie.
I didn't have much. I was out of town most of last week. I attended a meeting with the mayor. Last week? Or no.
It was last week.
Yeah, last week, right before I left, and then I was gone. So I missed a couple meetings due to a family vacation.
Great, thank you. I had a MAPS, Moab Area Partnership for Seniors 2.0 meeting. We're getting ready to revive that project over by the hospital and the care center. Good group of people. We're going to be meeting on a monthly basis. Our plan is to come up with a master plan. Michael's involved in that. Corey's also involved in that. This is a years-long project to help put some more housing, particularly for seniors and healthcare workers on that piece of property. There's about 10 acres there. So I'm really looking forward to this and meeting the plan of what we just had presented to us. So that's going to be a couple of years down the road, but we're getting started with that process, and I'm looking forward to that. As Ronnie mentioned, DOE meeting, really exciting. We're looking really close at closure. 2027 is probably the date where all that dirt will be moved. There'll be a lot more that needs to be done, but amazing. I mean, we started that project in 2009. So we're, 20 years down the road, we're finally getting to see the end of it. Also, Canyonlands Healthcare Special Service District meeting. Carly and I and Obi met with the Park Service to talk about the potential of them receiving wastewater and water from the city This is a long conversation. It was the beginning. They're just interested in it. We don't know where this is gonna go, but it was a good conversation. We also learned that a new superintendent for the Southeast Utah group should be appointed here any day now, so we should be hearing about that, which would be great. And then I'm gonna have the Park Service come and make a presentation to the council next meeting to just give you an update on how timed entry went this year and potentially provide a letter of support for permanent timed entry at Arches. This week, we've got the National Park Conservation Association Board in town for their annual retreat, and I'll be welcoming them on Wednesday. And then I met with Corey to talk further about the lighting ordinance that was at the Planning Commission meeting. Kaylin and I will be meeting with him this week to kind of go over what our thoughts are, and hopefully the Planning Commission will have a public hearing at their next meeting. And you guys will see that ordinance before you by the end of the year. And I met with all the city council candidates, great group of folks. You guys are going to be awesome. Whoever wins, good luck. But we're so fortunate to have such a good group of candidates that we'll be working with next year. So good luck to you all. Thank you. And that's it for me. Okay. Now we have two closed sessions. We're going to start with closed session 8.1. So I'm going to need you to go into make a motion to go into closed session for imminent or pending litigation. We'll come out of that executive session and then we'll go back to talk about sale and lease of real property. So if I could have a motion to go into closed session to talk about reasonably imminent or pending litigation.
I move to go into closed session to discuss reasonably imminent and or pending litigation.
Motion by Kaylin, second by Luke. Any discussion? All in favor?
Just checking, we're not doing 8.2.
We're gonna do that. We're gonna have to come back out and go back in.
Okay, because you mentioned 8.3 or 8.2 and
8.2 and
8.3.
8.3 will be combined.
Okay, sorry, you said
That's
2, not 3, so
No
just checking.
problem.
Okay.
Motion by Kaylin, second by Luke for the 8.1. All in favor?
Aye.